Hello and welcome to Mostly Vintage Cameras. This is a Monster Adapter LA VE2, and a few weeks ago I made a sort of unboxing video of this and I described the basic functions of it, and we looked very quickly at how it worked, and we even saw a couple of test pictures that I'd taken that afternoon. I did say at the time that I wanted to look at some of the more in-depth features on the camera and see if they were supported, and we would take some more pictures with it. This adapter actually has a not for sale sticker on it, and that's because this is a commercial sample for reviews and testing and that sort of thing. It's been very kindly lent to me by Ingema Pictures, who are the UK, EU and Swiss distributor for Monster adapters, and Monster Adapters in China kindly facilitated that loan, so I'd like to thank them both, but this is a fully independent review. I do have to send this back, sadly, but there we have it. I don't get paid to make these sorts of things. Unusual for me, in fact, to have a new product, but I digress. Just to quickly recap, for those people that didn't see the unboxing video, Monster Adapter are a Chinese brand of lens mount adapters. And from what I can tell from the website, I looked at it fairly quickly, they do a whole range of these. They do a Nikon F lens to Sony E-mount camera. Not even sure how that works, but they do one. They do an F Nikon lens to Nikon Z mount. So F to Z is fairly common. Nikon themselves do one, of course. I'm not quite sure where the differences are. I do believe Monster Adapters do have a Mark II version of the F to Z adapter out, but you'd have to look at their website or that of Ingema Pictures to see what the difference is. And then they do a little bit more interesting to vintage camera users, a Pentax K to E-mount adapter, so it's K-mount lenses on a Sony E-mount camera. And it gets even more interesting, I had no idea they did this, a Contax N lens mount to a Sony E-mount camera body. And finally the adapter we have here, the LA VE2, which is, well, if you haven't seen the unboxing video, let's see if we can guess. As I say, we've got the standard Sony E-mount on the back of this. This goes to the camera with a suite of electronic pins. This does support autofocus. But let's have a look at the lens side. So it's a 3-flange mount. There's a suite of electronic pins, of course. There's no drive shaft to support an autofocus screw drive motor. And there are no little mechanical levers that might operate an aperture stop down. So whatever lens mount this is, the autofocus and the aperture stop down requires a lens, or a motor, I beg your pardon, in the lens. So that's quite a sophisticated sort of lens mount, quite a modern sort of a lens mount, you might think. The obvious choice would be Canon EF, but this is not an EF to E mount adapter, although such adapters do exist. Now this is a little bit different. Let me put this box to one side and we'll take a look at this. This is a Minolta Vectus S1 camera. This is in the grey colour, they did it in grey and silver. This is an Advanced Photo System SLR camera. Now back in the days when Advanced Photo System film was a thing, and it's kind of died off now, Canon, Nikon and Minolta all made a host of very nice compact cameras, and also some single lens reflex cameras. Now Canon and Nikon, they use their existing 35mm optimized lens mounts on their Advanced Photo System cameras. Minolta went a little bit extra, they went a bit over the top, and they actually created an APS specific or APS optimized lens mount. So it's broadly based software wise on their A mount, but it is specific to the Advanced Photo System SLR cameras. They did use this lens mount on one early digital SLR, which was the RD3000, and there we go, that adapts our V-mount lens to our E-mount camera. Now before I go any further, just in case you've never seen one, this is an APS film. I'll take it out of the box. This expired in 2005, so it's 20 years out of date at this time. And there is nothing newer in APS film than 2011, and you're lucky if you can find one of those. So this is what an APS film cartridge looks like. It's very different to 35mm, and that's why it's sort of important to have a lens mount specific, there it is, to the film format. We still use the APS and APS-C terminology in terms of DSLR and mirrorless cameras. When we talk about crop sensors or APS-C size sensors, these lenses by definition are APS size sensor lenses. So they'll work great on a camera like a Sony a6000 series. So that's the a6000 to a6900. I presume there will be an a7000 at some point, but that's beyond the scope of this video. I don't have one of those, unfortunately, so I've been using an A7. This is an A7 Mark IV. It's a full frame camera, and you can use this. It does work and it does fit, and it's what we saw in the unboxing video. Just line the dots up, and there you go. We get a 1990s APS specific lens via an adapter on a modern mirrorless digital camera. Now that's pretty cool. I do have a couple of slight niggles, not criticisms, but niggles. As you saw earlier, the adapter ships in this rather fetching blue cardboard box. Turn it the right way around. And only this rather fetching blue cardboard box. So inside is a bit of bubble wrap and an instruction leaflet. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But let's have a look at another adapter. This is a very inexpensive mechanical only adapter. It's not even a mechanical adapter, there's no stop down lever for the aperture. But there's certainly no circuit board and no electronics in here. But it did come in a rather attractive and practical storage case. It would have been nice had the monster adapter come in something similar. I appreciate you have to cut costs where you can, and everything that goes in the box goes on the price ticket. It would just have been nice. I've got a more expensive Novaflex lens mount adapter, which also has no electronics in it, and that also came in a nice plastic storage box. So just a little heads up there. So let's take a little closer look at the construction of this. Try and do this in a sensible way. And see what we have. The main body of the adapter, as far as I can tell, seems to be plastic. We've got the lens mount, the release pin. Very positive action on the release pin lever there. The lens mount and the body mount, they are metal. They are kind of a satin finish. They're not exactly polished, but they're not exactly not polished. And they are etched with concentric circles on both the camera and the lens facing. When I first got this, I did feel the mounting to the camera was a little bit, I'm going to say rough, but that's not really the right word. It seemed to catch. So if you look here, there's a lens release or pin recess, and it did feel initially as though the adapter was catching on that. But having used it now for a little while, it doesn't, and I've just got used to it, and it's fine. Actually fits on very positively. In fact, if I pop that back on there, we'll take a look at that. So there's very little play in that body mount adapter. A very positive connection. Oh. As ever, I'm doing this from behind a video camera with very little working space, so apologies if I keep bumping the camera. As I mentioned earlier, there is electronic pins, because this is it does support auto exposure and autofocus. And a nice touch, you see the pins here on this end and the pins here on this end. So there's one set down here and one set up here. So it's obviously running information from the bottom to the top of the adapter. And where the pins go in all of this is encased. There's no exposed circuits or little soldered pins and stuff. It's quite a nicely finished thing. Of much more importance from the point of view of operation safety, and you would never know this just looking at it, I only know because I had some email conversation with Monster Adapter in China. This features a lens disconnect sensor. So as soon as you, if I put the lens on there, as soon as you start to remove the lens, it automatically knows that you're taking the lens off. It doesn't matter if it's active on both sides. So it doesn't matter if you take the lens off the adapter or the adapter off the camera. As soon as you start to remove this, it has a power disconnect. So you can imagine if the camera's turned on, it's running power through these pins down here in the lens throat, and if you start dragging random electrical contacts across live pins, that could have unintended consequences. So that's why this power disconnect is quite important on what you might call smart adapters, or adapters that support autofocus. So that's the basic description of the adapter and where it's come from and how it works. And if you're enjoying the video so far, do consider clicking like. I don't often say that. It does tell YouTube that you'd like this video, and YouTube therefore might recommend other videos of a similar nature. Likewise, as you're watching this video, you might want to consider hitting subscribe. I just hit 2,500 subscribers, for whom I'm very grateful. And honestly, when I started this channel, I didn't expect to have any subscribers, because I just assumed people were watching a video for the camera that related to them, and then they get on with their lives. So I'm very grateful to those people that have chosen to subscribe. And again, it does give YouTube an indication of what your preferences are, so YouTube can recommend more relevant videos for you. Now, some of the advanced features that I wanted to check out on the camera body were in-body image stabilization, focus tracking, focus peaking in manual focus, and eye tracking. So I'm going to start with, I think, focus peaking. I did try to film through the viewfinder of the camera. It's always difficult to film camera viewfinders, so apologies if this is a bit of a small shaky picture. But as you can see in this little clip, the focus peaking does work. So in manual focus, you will see this highlighted area of sharp focus. That was with the 50mm macro, one of the sort of standout lenses in the range, but we'll talk about the lens range again in a moment. In terms of focus tracking, with the 400mm reflex lens fitted, somewhat unusual lens to say the least, the focus tracking is locking on, and with this brightly lit, uncluttered scene, it's following focus actually quite nicely. I was quite surprised how well that worked. Come inside, in a more cluttered environment, this chap's got his back to us, but as he turns around you can see face detect and then eye detect immediately lock on. As the chap walks towards us, it loses eye detect and switches to face detect, but we have to accept the lenses aren't new lenses. They don't have the performance of a new lens, and I think my particular 400mm might actually have a little bit of an issue in terms of focusing. But the fact the eye tracking works, the focus tracking works, the face detection works, and the focus peaking works, these are all quite important features if you are using a modern camera. Now, in-body image stabilization is important because obviously lenses of this age don't have image stabilization built in. Very hard to demonstrate IBIS working, but here's a picture of an aeroplane at an air show, and you can see the propeller blades are blurry because I had a moderately slow shutter speed, and yet I've not got camera shake as a result of using a 400mm lens here. So all of those sorts of features are working just fine. Now at this stage we should probably talk a little bit about what lenses are available. We've already looked at this one. This is a 22 to 80 zoom. Now a little pro tip: if you already have some of these Minolta Vectus lenses, then obviously you're not going to know what I'm talking about. The range of lenses is 9. There are 9 of them. 8 of them came out with the APS SLRs, and the 9th lens, which is a 17mm f3.5, came out with an early digital camera, the RD 3000. Now, if you attempted to buy one of these to try it and use vintage lenses, particularly the 400mm. Very wild kind of image look with a reflex lens, and this might be an interesting way of getting a very high quality one. But if you go onto eBay and you look for Minolta Vectus lenses, to buy just the lenses on their own tends to be fairly not expensive. They're certainly not expensive lenses, but more expensive than the other way of buying it. Now, the 50mm is the 50mm. That's the 50mm macro f3.5. Kind of jammed in there. That's a great little lens. You'll usually find these sold individually rather than in a kit with a camera body, but either way, it's worth having. Really was the standout performer of the group. I only tested it with 3 lenses to be honest with you. But if you've got 1 or 2 and you want to get another one, usually it's cheaper to buy not the lens on its own, but buy the lens with a camera. If you wanted the 28 to 56, this was the sort of economy standard zoom lens, you might well find it cheaper to buy that with a camera body. And likewise, if you wanted a flash unit, buying the flash units on their own can be quite expensive, so you might want to buy that again with a body. I did have another S1 body lying around here for comic effect, but let's get rid of all of this. So from memory, the range is a 17mm 3.5, a 50mm 3.5, then we get the zoom lenses, the 22 to 80, the 28 to 56. There is like a 25 to 150. I would like to have tried that one, but I don't have one. I think as a around town, I suppose you would say street photography lens, that might be quite handy. And then after the 25 to 150, there are 2 telephoto lenses. I can't remember offhand what they are. I think one's like a 56 150 and the other's maybe a 50 to 170, which is more telephoto than you would expect from a 35mm lens, because obviously it's on a crop sensor body. And then the other lens is very weird, somewhat rare, not as rare as a 17mm. Minolta are the only company to make or have made an autofocus mirror lens, so this doesn't have conventional optics. It uses a mirror down the back of the lens, a double set of mirrors, and yet works surprisingly well, and it has autofocus, whereas most mirror lenses don't. There's this one, the 400 f8, and Minolta made a 500 f8 in the A mount, which was also autofocus, and those are the only 2. So let's take a look at some pictures. We'll start with the 50mm. I'm just going to run through some pictures. This is some books, and we can crop in on the books and we can see the 50mm really works quite well. But now if we just look at some pencils and a little bit closer, and this is I think 100% crop, and you can see the detail there is pretty staggering. Now if you had a Sony camera and you wanted a macro lens, maybe for occasional use, or you've got a one-off job, if you just want a macro lens for a short period, actually getting the monster adapter with the Minolta 50mm macro might be reasonably cost effective. The lenses are super inexpensive. You can certainly find one of these for less than £50. And the adapters in GBP, they work out at about £205. Up until the end of September 2025, you can save 4% at Igma Pictures using the code MVC25. I do get a little bit of a commission if you use that code, but at the end of the day, 4%, it's nice to have, it's not a deal breaker. So for sort of 250 quid, you can have actually a pretty good quality macro lens adapted to your Sony camera, and the 50mm, as you can see here, does almost cover the full frame. And here's a warning, there's an insect going up. Pretty decent detail in this. So the 50mm, it's a good performing lens. The 22 to 80, I didn't actually try the 28 to 56 unfortunately, but the 22 to 80, I didn't take too many pictures with it. It worked pretty well. You can see on the full frame image the corners are very dark. You'd have to crop these down if you're using it on a full frame camera. It wouldn't be a problem on a crop sensor camera. people to get wound up with the what's the real focal length? What's the focal length on the full frame? What's the equivalent focal length? It's not a subject I like to get involved in because of mathematical reasons. I'm not going to go into it here. But as a rule of thumb, this 22 to 80 you could say is more like a, I don't know, a 35 to maybe a 105, something like that. Very practical lens to have. I would have liked to have tried that 25 to 150 because I think for street photography having that slightly longer focal length might have been a little bit handy. And then we get to the big boy. I took some static pictures with this. This first one I wanted to see if I could get infinity focus with the adapter, and this church spire isn't true infinity because nothing is, but it's far enough away to be a proxy. And as you can see, it's perfectly sharp. And you might notice a little black circle just to the left of the top of the spire. I'm not sure if that's a speck of dust on a sensor or if that's a bird in flight. I think it's a bird in flight. And this is one of the weird characteristics of reflex lenses. So if you have a sharp in focus picture, everything looks fine. Anything that goes out of focus that has a specular highlight, we get these lovely circular, sometimes called donut bokeh rings or donut rings. So that is a characteristic of mirror lenses. But even if we don't have bright highlights, when we look at a regular photo with a blurry background, we get a really unusual and pleasing to my eye type of bokeh. And there's a couple of examples here. So I'm surprised, you know, in this day and age, motion picture makers and generally consumer filmmakers, they're very eager to adapt one lens to another camera to try things out. So in this age of adapting vintage lenses to modern cameras to shoot video and film in, I'm surprised nobody's picked up on this using mirror lenses in motion pictures or in home video type stuff. It does give a very unusual effect. I'm just going to show a few more pictures now, nothing special. I did go to an air show recently. These are mostly with the 400mm because I have to say this is a tremendous fun lens to use. The autofocus speed, not the fastest, and you do have to nail the focus to get a sharp result, but tremendous look, great fun. It also tends to get you noticed. People do notice a silver fat lens stuck on the front of your camera. Okay then, so that's basically the monster adapter for V-mount lenses. As I say, they do it for other mounts as well. It does seem to be, in conversation with the company in China, they do seem to know what they're talking about, especially on the sort of firmware and software side of things. I was quite impressed with their knowledge of the Minolta system and the Sony system and getting it to work together. And if you saw the unboxing video, which I'll link at the end of this video and in the description, there was some indication that they'd gone a little bit beyond just getting the aperture and the focus to work. They'd really sorted out some of the more advanced features, as indeed we saw in the start of this video. So if you have a Minolta Vectus S camera, or if you're lucky enough to have an RD3000, this does give your lenses a new lease of life. If you want to try something really quite different on your next video project, you could maybe go for the 400mm reflex. That would be bonkers. Just on the subject of video, I should have said autofocus is not supported in the video mode. It's not meant to be, it's not listed on the specification as being supported, but if you are thinking of shooting video, just bear in mind you will have to focus manually. And as I said earlier, if you're got a one-off project that needs a macro lens, this might be an option, getting a Minolta Vectus 50mm macro and the monster adapter. But obviously the primary market for this are people that are going to be advanced photo system enthusiasts who already have Minolta V-mount lenses. Anyway, there's not really much more to say about this. It's a simple product, or it's a simple to use product. It's actually quite sophisticated in my mind. But I hope you found this video useful or interesting, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate it.